audibility and visibility is clear means can you raise your hand? Good evening. We will start our today's session. Okay, today we are going to discuss the last topic of our module 3, that is public key cryptography. So we'll be discussing about what is meant by public key cryptography. So if we see the introduction about public key cryptography, it is also called as asymmetric key cryptography. So till the previous class, whatever we just discussed comes under symmetric key cryptography, where you're going to use the same key for both encryption as well as for decryption, right? Whereas in asymmetric key cryptography, we are going to use two different keys. There is one key for encryption and a different one for decryption. So as I said, there are two different ways of encryption system. There is a cryptographic system. Okay, both exist parallel in our day-to-day life because they have their own strength and weaknesses. So based on it, the applications will vary for symmetric and asymmetric key cryptography. So if you want to say shortly, okay, asymmetric key cryptography is based upon sharing the secrecy. That is how we are going to share your key, because you are going to use the same key for encryption as well as for decryption. So the key has to be shared between the transmitter and receiver, right? Whereas if you take asymmetric key cryptography, it is based upon personal secrecy. That is, both transmitter as well as receiver, they are going to use separate keys and they're going to have their own secrecy maintained by them, right? So under this category comes your asymmetric key cryptography. So before moving into one of the asymmetric cryptographic system, that is public key systems, we'll see what are keys used here. There is two different keys, and what is the general idea behind this public key cryptographic system, and what is the need for both public key as well as our symmetric key crypto system. Next, we'll see one of the most important thing called Trapdoor Way Function, which forms a basis. That is a basic thing which kindled our public cryptography system. And then we'll see a few applications. Then we move on to a system called RSA crypto system, which is one of the famous public key cryptography system. We will be discussing many systems in our next module. Okay, then we'll see a few examples of solving this RSA crypto system. Right. To start off with, okay, there are two different keys, as I said, called private key and a public key. Right. So whenever I see a public key and private key, the public key will be used for locking purpose, which means public key will be used for your encryption. Right. And your private key will unlock. It's called decryption process. Right. Both public key and your private keys, okay, they have some relationship, some mathematical relationship do exist between these two keys. Right. So if you see a private key and public key, each and every user who are going to use an asymmetric key crypto system will have their own public key and private key. Okay, for example, here see Alice want to communicate to Bob. Okay, so Alice have to access the public key of Bob. Bob will be having his own public key as well as my private key, but Bob will be sharing only the public key. Bob's public key alone will be shared with the entire public people. So whoever want to communicate with Bob can access the public key and he can able to perform the encryption. So it's like a lock with two keys. So for locking the lock, that is for encryption, I'm using Bob's public key, right? So this one. Then the data is transmitted here, and Bob is used his own private key, which is known only to him, so that he can able to open the lock using his private key. So both public and private key belong to the same person with a few relationship between public key and private key. There's some mathematical background relationship do exist, but they are two different keys, right? So these are the basic how it is different from our symmetric cryptographic system, where you are going to use the same key for both encryption and decryption process. Okay, is it clear, guys, regarding this public key and private key? If it is clear, raise your hand if anyone have any doubt in this. So can there be more than one private key for the same public key? No, it is a one-to-one relationship. So one private key, each and every user will have a private key. But if you want to modify himself So that is okay, sir. I want to change my private key means then he have to say change the entire set. That is, he has to change his public key and private key because both are interrelated. So we can't able to keep one as constant and one as different. So we have to change them. Okay, it's up to user wish. Suppose Bob want to update his key, he can able to change his private key and accordingly he will change his public key and announce it. Okay, nice. So anyone have any more doubts on this one? Thank you, Kashish. It's a good one. Good question. Fine. Right. So we'll see a general idea how it works on. Okay. Exactly how the asymmetric crypto system works. So here, as I said, only one user, especially a receiver, will have a key generation procedure. How we used to have a key generator or key expander, we just saw in our AES and DES algorithm. This thing will be used in both transmitter end and the receiver end. Whereas in this case, asymmetric crypto system, the receiver will have a key generation procedure where he will be generating a public key and a private key, but he will be giving the public key to the public key distribution channel. And there's a separate channel for public key distribution. We will see there's a separate system called KDC, called Key Distribution Center, how the keys can be distributed in the public. There's a separate entity which we'll be discussing in the upcoming modules. Right. So using this public key access, anyone who want to communicate with Bob can able to grasp his public key and he can able to perform the encryption. Okay. And the ciphertext which is received by Bob will be again decrypted but using his private key which is known one and only to Bob. So this is the basic idea behind an asymmetric key crypto system. Right. So as I said, and this is the most important thing. So till now, we just discussed about symmetric key cryptography, right? In symmetric key cryptography, we'll be dealing in terms of bits, bytes. At max, we'll go with words, right? So for example, if you take DES algorithm, all the operations will be in terms of bits, right? Whereas if you go with AES algorithm, we'll be dealing with bytes or words, right? Whereas if you go with the asymmetric cryptography, all the entities will be in terms of integer, mere integer numbers. Right. I hope everyone know what is an integer. We discussed in our module 2. Right. So all the asymmetric cryptography, everything will be in terms of integer. So this one shows some mathematical way of representing encryption and decryption. That is, we'll be using an encryption algorithm called F using the public key. K is a public key. Okay. Over the plain text, the ciphertext received can be retrieved using a private key using a decryption algorithm called G. Right. What is the need for both, sir? You're saying that symmetric key cryptography is there, asymmetric key cryptography is there. So which is best, or which can able to overcome which one? So it is not like this is best or this is worst kind of thing, because both have their own advantage and disadvantage. For example, if you take symmetric key cryptography, it plays major role in encrypting whenever your messages are very large. Okay, so computational time is less in symmetric key cryptography and compared to asymmetric key cryptography. We'll see why. We'll can able to appreciate once you come across any one of the asymmetric key crypto system. So symmetric key cryptography will play a major role whenever a large message is involved. So, but it does not eliminate the need of asymmetric key cryptography because asymmetric key cryptography have major applications in the present day scenarios, especially for authentication purpose. Okay, nowadays we now have digital signatures. That too during this pandemic time, everything is going to be signed mostly by digital signatures, right? Document verification, everything. So everything depends upon asymmetric key cryptography and the secret key exchange. Even asymmetric key cryptography helps symmetric key cryptography system to share its key, because in symmetric key the key used at the transmitter end has to be used at the receiver end, right? So the key has to be exchanged. To exchange this key very efficiently without leaking the key, because once the key is known, then there's no use at all using symmetric key cryptography, right? So for the secret key exchange itself, asymmetric key cryptography is going to help my symmetric key cryptography system, right? So we need both for I mean the coexistence of both crypto system has to be there for modern day cryptographic system. Okay, now we move on to a function called trapdoor one-way function, which is a basic concept, okay, or basic idea behind this asymmetric cryptography. For example, here assume that A is a transmitter and B is a receiver, and A is transmitting X, okay, as in the form of Y after encrypting using a function called f of x, and Y is received by B. Okay. Now B can able to retrieve X because it has to retrieve the value of X either having knowledge of two things. One is he has to have the knowledge of F, or he has to have the knowledge of F inverse. Yes or no? If he has the knowledge of F, he can able to manipulate, or F inverse directly he can able to get the value of X. Right. So this computing F, if you are setting a function, if F is very easy to compute, then it is a one-way function. Okay. And if you are making F inverse to be very difficult to compute. Okay. For example, if f is very simple function, okay, it is directly known to the receiver, then he can able to get the data back. Suppose if you are giving a f inverse, which is also a difficult thing, but it's a possible one, then also he can able to compute inverse. Like for example, f is nothing but a constant integer, okay, and you have to find the multiplicative inverse. Means you can use many theorems today there, and you can able to find the answer, right, and you can able to compute. But if suppose f is a very tough function, the function is very strong, mathematically strong, and the receiver does not have the knowledge of f as well as he doesn't have the knowledge of f inverse, okay, then it will become a one-way function. That is, no one can able to retrieve the data. So to retrieve this data, I have to give him a trapdoor. Okay. The trapdoor is nothing but like a clue. If I'm asking a riddle for you, only people are thinking maybe a riddle is very tough. For next thing, what you people will ask me, sir, get me a clue. Give me a clue so that I can able to think in a right direction. The clue which I'm going to give is nothing but a trapdoor, which will make the receiver to compute the thing very easily. You'll see an example so that you'll get a clear picture. Suppose I'm giving you a large integer called n, which is a product of two numbers p and q. Right. Suppose if I give you p and q and I ask you to compute the value of n, you can easily do. But I'm giving the value of n alone. But you have to compute p and q exactly. It is very difficult. For example, assume that I'm giving you the value of n to be 24. Okay. And I'm asking you to tell me what will be the value of P and Q, because both are product. Some will tell 24 cross 1. Some will tell 12 cross 2. Some will tell 8 cross 3. Right. Some will tell 6 cross 4. Right. So it can be any one answer. P and Q also, this is also correct, this is also correct, this is also correct, and this is also correct. But giving the value of n and asking you p and q, it's a very difficult to compute. I mean, you can able to compute and tell me, but there will be many options. So it is a one-way function if I simply give you the value of n. But suppose assume the second example, here n is a large number and the function is nothing but y we are going to compute is nothing but x power k mod n. This k is a key which are going to use at the transmitter. So this is a trapdoor one-way function. Suppose if I give you the value of x, k, and n, you can able to easily compute a y. There is a ciphertext. If you have the knowledge of y, k, and n, okay, that is, you have the value of y and k is there and n, but you have to find x. So you have to go for a discrete logarithmic effect, or you have to take a log on both sides, right? Then only, suppose if the n is a very large number, as I said, very large number, then to calculate x becomes more complex. I'm not saying it is impossible, it is possible, but it will become more complex one. Okay, in order to avoid this complexity, what I'm going to do, since I'm going to give you a trapdoor, the trapdoor is nothing but I'm giving you an extra value called k dash, such that k dash is nothing but if you multiply k times k dash, it will be congruent to 1 modulo. Assume this is as of, okay, as of now, just assume this is n. It is k is if you multiply k with k dash, it will be congruent to 1 modulo n. Now, can you people tell what is the relationship between this k dash and k? Can you tell? You can use chat bots or you can unmute and tell. The trapdoor which I am saying is k dash, and the relationship between the k and the k dash is nothing but if you multiply both of them, it will run for congruency of 1 modulo n. Can you tell what is the relationship between k and k dash? Yes. So both are multiplicative inverse to each other. So I can directly use the same function, but instead of k dash, so instead of k, if I use k dash, I can able to easily get my x here. So here the trapdoor, this is a trapdoor one-way function. Without trapdoor, it became a one-way function. Here the k dash is the trapdoor. And if you want to relate it with the asymmetric cryptography, this key is nothing but my public key, and this k dash is my private key, which will be known only to that receiver. Sorry. Okay. So this is the idea behind our asymmetric cryptography. Most of the crypto systems, they use this multiplicative inverse only. We will see in the upcoming slides. So is it clear, guys, regarding up to this topic? If it is clear, raise your hands. If anyone have any doubt with this trapdoor one-way function or any other thing, you can ask me now. Thank you, Arun. Okay, Kashish, what about others? Only two. Fine. Thank you, Venkat. Fine. Now we'll see certain applications of public key cryptography. One is conventional encryption decryption, which is nothing but a cryptography system. Apart from this, it provides authentication for digital signatures and key exchange, as we already said. So some of the famous algorithms which we will be discussing, okay, we'll be discussing extra topics also, I mean extra algorithms, but some of the famous algorithms are RSA, which we'll be discussing in this module. Then our elliptic curve arithmetic, which we just saw in the previous module, second module, we just saw elliptic curve arithmetic, right? So elliptic curve cryptography is also coming under public cryptography. Right? Then which have been used for both encryption, for digital signature and key exchange. Both algorithms cover all these three. And then we have one of the famous key exchange algorithm called Diffie-Hellman. Okay, Diffie-Hellman is a famous key exchange algorithm. We are still in use. Then we have a famous digital signature standard. Even nowadays, our Indian national banks are using this one, DSS, digital signature standard, okay, which comes under our public key cryptography. Right. So to start off with, now we move to RSA crypto system. So this RSA stands for Reversed Shamir and Adelman. Okay, these three persons belong to MIT, that's Massachusetts, and they proposed this system in the year 1977, like roughly 20 years before our AES algorithm. Before that itself, they came across this public key cryptography system. Okay. So this has some thing to play with our finite fields, rings and groups. We'll see. I'll directly jump into how this RSA works on. Right. So in RSA algorithm, we'll be using two keys. E is nothing but my public key, and D is nothing but my private key. Right. And here the exponentiation function is used as a encryption as well as decryption part. Okay. So here you can able to see the ciphertext is computed using the plain text, and here, as I said, everything will be in terms of integers. So your public key, private key, everything will be an integer number. Right. So plain text will also be an integer. We'll see how this conversion occurs from alphabet to integer. We'll just see. So we have a plain text, okay, and which is risen to the power of e, which is the public key, and modulo n. And one more thing, n will also be known to the public. This n will be decided by Bob only. Okay, because the public key is the public keys of Bob, because Bob is the receiver here. So once the ciphertext is produced, it is transmitted here, and the ciphertext once received is decrypted using C, which is risen to power D, and D is nothing but the private key of Bob under modulo n. Okay. Suppose there is an attacker, and he can have the knowledge of C, and he can also be able to have the knowledge of the public keys because public keys are known to everyone, E and N. So using the ciphertext E and N, he has to find the ETH root of ciphertext and modulo N to get the plain text. So how this RSA system works to not to make that more complex for the attacker, in the sense they will choose the values of the integers, especially the public keys and the private keys, to be larger numbers. Okay, this is the basic operation of RSA. We will see some examples so that you will get a clear picture. Is it clear, guys, how this RSA basic structure of RSA looks and works on? If it is clear, raise a hand so that if outer skeleton is clear, then only you can able to understand the functions inside. Okay, okay. Thank you, guys. Okay, right. So now this one have a detailed structure. Like if this previous one is like a photography, means this is like your X-ray of our RSA crypto. So what's happening inside? So here how this calculation part occurs. In the sense, first operation in our public key cryptography is nothing but key generation is the first thing, because without key we can't do anything. So if you see the key expression, the first thing what you do is we will be selecting two prime numbers called P and Q. Okay, so this P and Q are nothing but two prime numbers, but these two prime numbers should be belonging to a group. That is, the element should be belonging to a group of this one. That is a Z phi of n star. I hope everyone knows what is Z n star and what is phi of n. I hope everyone remembers phi function. And Z phi of n is small. If you find the phi of n value, then phi of n star under multiplication as an operation. Right. So you have to choose P and Q in such a way that those things belong to that particular group. From examination point of view, don't worry, we will be providing you the values of P and Q. So anything if you want to choose, it will be chosen by us. Right. Now you'll be calculating the value of n. Right. Then you'll be selecting the value of E and D. You will see how this E and D is selected and how it is computed. You will see in the next slide. So in this key generation procedure, we'll be getting the values of E, D and N, because N is produced from these two prime numbers P and Q. Right. So I'll be announcing this E and N to the public so that the receiver, the transmitter, whoever want to communicate with Bob, he will access E and N of Bob. Then he will compute a ciphertext called C using a plain text, whatever you want to transmit, and E and N. So once they found this value, the value of C which you are going to find will belong to element of this ring. So this is for your information. This ring is nothing but Zn with the addition and multiplication as operation. The same thing if you see at the decryption end. Once it is received here, the decryption, it is done using my private key D over the modulo N, and the plain text which is produced will also become an element of the same ring. Right. Now we move on to, this is what I will just explain in the previous thing is there in this one. Right. And here comes one of the important point if people have to remember in this slide is nothing but the plain text integer which you are going to choose should be always greater than 0 and less than value of n. That's why they will always have the n to be very larger number so that the transmitter can able to send any plain text very easily. Right. Okay. Suppose if message p must be smaller than modulus n, means suppose for example assume a plain text comes in 6 digits. Okay. But you have your value of n to be only 3-digit mint. As I'm speaking of integer, just break them into 2 blocks. Each block having 3 digits, and you can able to perform the encryption here. Right. Now we move on to the generation of public and private key. How this E and D are generated. I want everyone to listen to this carefully. If you have any doubts anywhere, kindly stop me then and there. We will see an example. We will work out an example on the same thing. So before that, I want everyone to listen to this carefully. Right. So how the key setup process is going to happen. The first thing is nothing but, as I said, we have to choose two prime numbers. It will be always very large prime numbers. Okay, this is the first step. Next step, I will be computing the value of n. So p dot q is nothing but multiplication. So I got one of my public n. Next step, I have to find phi of n. So since both p and q are prime numbers, I hope everyone knows the properties of phi function. So if you are, it is a product of two prime numbers, means it is p minus 1 into q minus 1. There will be studying as m minus 1 into n minus 1, the third property, right? The same thing is applied here, right? Now I'm coming for the generation of my encryption key or the public key. E is a public key and it is has to be a random number which has to be chosen. And one under two condition. One condition is nothing but the E which you are going to choose should be lying between 1 to 5 of n. That's why you are computing this 5 of n here. So E should lie between 1 to 5 of n and the GCD between E and 5 of n should run for 1. Or I can able to say E and 5 of n are relatively prime to each other. Right. Now I got my value of E in this step. Right. So with this two, I got my public keys. Next, I am going to compute my decryption key called D, which is nothing but my private key. So the private key, they are having a relationship that E dot D will be congruent to 1 modulo phi of n, and the value of D will be always greater than 0 and less than n. Obviously, it will be less than n because you are computing phi of n. Right. So here you are finding D. So if you see the relationship between E and D, so E is nothing but equal to, or E inverse is nothing but equal to D. Because both are multiplicative inverse to each other. Right. Now, once you have computed the value of D, you will be getting your private key here. Okay. So using this, you can able to start with your encryption process. Now, how this RSA system works? What is the math behind how using these two numbers? In the sense, you can able to see here they are using the basic Euler's theorem, because you have your value of n to be p dot q, phi of n is p minus 1 q minus 1. Okay, and you are choosing E and D to be inverse to each other. Under these conditions, okay, so if you have E dot D, obviously it will run for 1. We already know. And why this k dot phi of n comes into picture? In the sense, even if you have anything, any times of, for example, okay, we already saw relationship between E and phi of n. GCD between these two runs for 1. So if have any other number with you or any other value with you in the terms of your ciphertext, okay, so that is C is written as D and I can able to write it as p power E into D because this is nothing but my value of my ciphertext, right? And I can able to write E dot D as 1 plus k times phi of n, because phi of n is nothing but the modulo operator. You can multiply it k times plus 1, because if you divide, this plus 1 will stand out as a remainder. Okay, that's why you got this one here, right? So p power 1 dot p of phi of n, actually speaking, this k should come here, right? So we already know p anything power, I mean sorry, a power phi of n modulo n will go to 1. This is Euler's theorem. So this entire thing will go to 1. So 1 raised to power any value of k will be 1 alone. So p power 1, I'll be getting a plain text back. We'll see an example so you will get a clear picture. So I want everyone to have the calculators ready. Okay, for each and every step, I want you people to tell me the answer. Right.
Sir, if we have P and Q, if like P and Q have to be very large numbers, right? Because if we reduce P and Q, then using E and N, that is public, we can get the private key as well.
Yes, exactly. But for example, I will start with smaller numbers. I will also show an example of a real-time system, how it works. Okay, you'll get a clear picture at that time. Is it okay? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, for your understanding, I'm starting with small numbers. Now they given you a prime number called p is equal to 17 and q is 11. Now I want you people to tell me the answer of n and phi of n. Kindly post it in the chat box. N and phi of n. Yeah, phi of n 160. Arun, is it 181?
Sir, N is 181 and phi of N is 160.
Sure, it is 181 now. It's coming 181.
So N is Q into P, right? P into Q.
P and Q, yeah.
Sir.
We're getting 187
Oh,
because
okay. No, 187. Sorry, sir.
this is 7 here, right? That's why. Okay, 187, yes. And you'll be getting your phi of n to be 160, right? So in examination point of view, we'll be giving this P and Q. Next, they are choosing my E to be 7. So in examination, we will also provide the value of E. For your understanding, I am giving a smaller number. E is given as 7. Now you have your public key values as, that is public key values are E comma N, which is nothing but 7 comma 187. Now I want you people to tell me the value of D. So D is nothing but my E inverse mod phi of N. So E inverse is nothing but here you have to find, right, multiplicate inverse, you have to find E inverse, sorry, that is 7 inverse, yeah, 7 inverse mod 160. Right, you can use your Euler's theorem here. Euler's theorem if you use, it will come as phi of n minus 1, 7 power. So can you tell me the multiplicative inverse of 7 under 60 in the chat box? We can't use Fermat theorem because your modulo operator is even, it's not a prime number. So we can't go for Fermat theorem. You can use your Euler's theorem. Any answer on the multiplicative inverse of 7? $64, okay. Any other answer? Not 64, okay, okay. Three. Kashish, you have any other answer? Okay, okay, okay. I'll give you time. How many of you are getting same answer as Arun got? Okay, 23. Right. So you got answer to be 23. It's correct. Right. So now you got my private key also. Private key is something but 23, which also forming under the condition that greater than 0, less than phi of n, and it is a GCD with this one. Sorry, but this one is that condition, right? Right. Suppose now you have got this one. Now you have a message like this one. Your public, plain text is 88. Right. So if you use our encryption process, that is 88 power 7 mod 187, because 7 is nothing but the value of E and this is the value of N, and this is your public keys, and you got your ciphertext to be 11. And if I use my decryption process here, right, so 11 power 23, which is nothing but your D mod 187. So whenever you face this one, you can either go for your fast exponentiation method. A fast exponentiation to find the answer. If you are okay with the calculator, then well and good. If not, you have to go with fast exponentiation method. Right, you can able to get your plain text back. Right. Is it clear, guys? The process of RSA, for your understanding, I just showed with a smaller number. Is it clear? If it is clear, raise your hand. If you have any doubts, you can ask me now.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Can you explain this once again? Like once we have the message P, then what we are supposed to do?
Okay. Okay. So we have the plain text P. Now I have to encrypt. Encrypt means I have to get the ciphertext, which is nothing but the plain text which you have will be risen to the power E and modulo n. This is your this exponentiation function is nothing but your encryption algorithm here. So E is nothing but my public key cryptography, and N is nothing but my public key, and N is also my public key, right? So you have E and N with you. So once you substitute here, the plain text value is 88. This is 7 more 187. The answer is nothing but your ciphertext here. Here everything will be in terms of integers, right? And again, in the decryption process, I'll be using my ciphertext received, risen to power D modulo n. D is nothing but my private key, the private key which you computed to be 23, and n is same 187. Here your phi of n doesn't going to play any role in our encryption decryption. It's only used at the key setup area. That's all. Is it clear, Ashish?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Also, sir, in step 3,
okay,
that you had in previous slide.
Yeah, this one.
No, sir. Before the steps, which had that something should be between 1 and 5. E should be in between.
This one.
Yeah, yes, sir.
E
In
should
this
be
case,
between 1 to
can
5.
E so can E be equal to 1 or phi of n, or it should lie in between?
In between. Only D has that privilege. D can be either equal to 0 or equal to n, but E can't be equal to 1 or equal to phi of n. It should be in between.
Okay, sir.
Don't worry, we will give you the value of E in examination.
Sir, if D is 0, then all the final plain text will be 1 mod something, right?
Yes. Such situation won't arise, but they gave that condition. That's all. No issues. We can't able to have 0 as a multiplicative inverse to anything.
Okay, sir.
Right. It won't come. So as I said, you can use your square and multiply algorithm. I just kept the same slide for a thing. So for efficient encryption, so if you want to make an efficient encryption, you have to use your power E. Okay, should be very larger size. If you use smaller size, then you can able to easily crack. Mostly they use Chinese similar theorem. Okay, if they able to interpret 3 messages, okay, from you, they can able to use Chinese similar theorem to crack the value of E. Okay, so you can't able to use like smaller numbers like 3, 17 and all, right? And if you go for decryption process, if you have chosen E to be a larger number, obviously you'll be getting the value of D also to be a larger number, right? So it is recommended to choose the values of E and D to be very large. Okay. Like you can able to see, 1 second. Yeah. So this is another example. This is for your information just kept here. If you have a P and Q to be 7 and 11, So the n came to be 77. They found phi of n to be 60. And here they are choosing e to be 13. So the multiplicate, the inverse of 13 under modulo 60 gives me 37, right? So here you got your, this is your public value. This is my private key. So if your plain text is simply 5, you can able to see the ciphertext generated using 5 power 13 mod 77. Because n, I got my ciphertext to be 26. And the decryption, they used the private key D here, and I get the plain text back. Suppose if you want to send another message, no need to change, as Kashi said, sir, whether the keys has to be changed or not. No need to change the key. You can use same public key and the private key. Suppose John is going to transmit a plain text 63, he'll be getting a different ciphertext. So no need of change of key, but if you need, means you can change, but you have to announce to the public that old key is expired and this key is a new thing. That is for the public key. Right. So for example, here I just increase the number, but here in real time, the values of P and Q will run for more than 6 digits. Right. So here you can able to see P and Q, we have 3 digits, and they calculated, if you multiply this two, they get the value of n to be here, and phi of n runs for 158400, and here they have chosen the value of e to be 343, and if you compute the inverse e inverse under modulo phi of n, that is under this modulo, you get the d to be 12007. Suppose here a person Ted wants to send a message no to Jennifer. So what we will do in sense, we will be giving the positional values, okay, of alphabets from 00 to 25. Here n is there and 0 is there. N will be in 13th position and O will be in 14th position. So I will just combine these two and I'll use my plain text to be 13, 14, 1314 as a single 4-digit number. Right. So now this is my plain text. Now you just imagine this is a plain text. This is your public key and this is your value of n. That is, you will be computing 1314 power 343 mod 159197. Right. You will be getting my ciphertext has to be 33677. Suppose an attacker gets the knowledge of C as well as he has the knowledge of the public keys. So he has to compute to get the plain text back. He has to find 343 root of 33677 mod 159197. Then only he can able to get this plain text back and he can able to get the exact alphabets N1. Otherwise, if this is a private key which is used here, so again once a ciphertext is received, they rise to power like this. Don't worry, in examination we won't ask like this. It is for your understanding, I just kept. And mod, they get the plain text back to get the original plain text. No. Simply transmit NO, just see how much computation it undergoes. So it's highly secure, that's why. Right. Now, if you see the security approaches, what are different attacks your RSA can undergo? Nothing but it can undergo brute force attack, that is trial and error method. If you're using very smaller size of numbers for N, P, Q, or E, okay, then mathematical attacks. So this also everything, most of the attacks will occur when based on the size of your P and Q values. Okay, so we have to make it more computationally difficult to not to mitigate this mathematical attacks. Then timing attacks, as I said, they will try to listen to 3 or 4 messages. If it is your values are smaller numbers, then they will use Chinese remainder theorem to break through it. And then chosen ciphertext attacks, like they will only attack only certain ciphertext which are weak, so that you can able to compute these things easily if they want. And everything will relate to the size of the values of P and Q which you're going to choose. Right. Is it clear, guys, regarding RSA. Okay. So with this, we will wrap up today's session.